In this episode of the podcast, it's all about photography clubs. Should you join one? Should you start one? What are they all about? This is TWiP. Hey folks, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I am your host, Frederick Van Johnson. Today, we're going to be talking about photography clubs and diving into what that world is all about, and more importantly, how it can benefit you as a photographer, regardless of where you are in your photographic journey. A lot of folks look at photography clubs and are like, yeah, I don't know about that, or there's no clubs near me. I don't know how to find clubs, all these things, all these excuses not to join them. But as it turns out, one of the missing links in most photographers' journeys, I would argue maybe even up through professional photographers, is feedback and the community around photography, because photography tends to be a very kind of solo or insular kind of activity, kind of like golf, maybe even more so than golf. But it feels very, you could do it by yourself and you don't need to be around anyone. You could go shoot your landscapes or whatever and be totally zen and by yourself. However, turns out we need feedback on our work in order to get better, correct mistakes, get new ideas, try new techniques, all these things. And the only way you can do that is to participate in a community in some way or another. So we're going to talk about that today. And to have that conversation, I've been lucky enough to be joined by two guests. I have Jessica and Michael here, who are going to take us through their experiences with photo clubs. They're both active in photography clubs. We're going to dive into them and find out what it's all about. Jessica, I want to start with you. Give us a little background on who you are and why you love photography clubs so much. Now, just a little background on who you are.
Hi, I'm Jessica Villia, and I live in Colorado Springs, Colorado. I am a Colorado native, and I'm very proud of that. And I work with a lot of families and children, and actually another weird little niche of musicians, classical musicians, and I work on a ton of fine art photography. So if I can paint something, I'm painting it, and if I can composite something, I'm compositing it. So rarely does it come out looking like I took it in my camera. That's usually just like a base of what I want it to be.
Love it. Well, welcome, and thank you for joining us today. This is going to be a good conversation. And on the other side over here, I think also in Colorado, is Michael Ryno. Michael Ryno, tell us about yourself and where you came from. Are you also a native Coloradan?
I am not a native Coloradan, and thank you once again, Frederick, for having us on today. I'm actually was in Southern California before I moved to Colorado, but I consider myself a Colorado native almost, in that more than half my life has been in Colorado, I should say. So it's right about 30 years now. And as far as photography, I don't know if I have a real specialty. I do plenty of different genres of photography. What got me into photography was landscape and nature and wildlife. But over the last couple of years, I've also taken an interest in actually photographing people. And actually, would have never thought I would have done this without having joined clubs and so forth. But now I have photographed a few weddings recently, doing family portraits and that sort of thing. So I'm really enjoying just continuing to learn more and more about photography.
I love it. And that's why we're here today, right? It's to talk about that feedback loop. Like you said, you likely would not have experienced the joy of shooting weddings had it not been for the photography club. Let's take it from there, Michael. So when we use the phrase photography club, what is that? Because it sounds, when I know what a photography club is, but when I say it, it sounds dated. Like a club? Like like the Mickey Mouse Club? Like what is this club thing? Like explain the whole concept of the photography club to us.
Sure, and to me it means a lot of different things in that. I think of it as different organizations, and they all are unique. I belong to, I'll say probably 5 or 6 of them. Some of those are the in-person style, I'll say. I'm currently the president of Professional Photographers of Colorado, formerly the past president of Lone Tree Photography Club. So those clubs are, we have in person, we have hybrid meetings, We have conventions, conferences, and so forth and that. So a lot of in-person, but also a lot of, I'll say virtual meetings and that we do with those. And then the other types of clubs that I'll say, other organizations and that, are the communities. One of those being This Week in Photo, TWiP, the one that you operate. And so I see that as being a really fun group and so forth and that, again, learning from that. And then there's a couple of other ones in that. There's Nicole Young has one, Nicole Z, Photo Focus. I belong to that one and do some articles for them. So, to your point, I think of, clubs as being, in my opinion, really good opportunities to learn from other photographers. And then subsequently, once you do the learning, you also have the opportunities to teach and educate others on some of the things that you've learned across the way. So to me, I think of these clubs, as you say, as, to me, just really good opportunities to, learn from others and then help others along the way.
Yeah. Jessica, do you agree with that? Is it more of kind of a collaborative thing, or, is it a reason to get out of the house and get from behind the camera? Or like, what is your best reason for them?
Man, there's so many reasons. So I've done them all. So I've done the whole spectrum. And I think for moms, especially, there's clubs centered around being a mom tog. I don't know if you guys have heard that phrase. Where you're a mom and you're a photographer and you're just trying to make some extra money. And I started there, and I've been in clubs where it's very much a popularity contest of who's maybe not really, really good at what they do, but they are the most popular person there, and they're the ones leading the club. And then I've been in other ones where it's very much a community based on learning and teaching and growing, whether that's in business or in photography. I mean, some of these clubs that I've been a part of and still am a part of, they're my second family. I love these people so much.
Yeah. And I hear that a lot. That's how the community that Michael mentioned, the TWiP community, is very much like that, or a group of people that just kind of, like when we meet, we very rarely, interestingly, dive deeply into photography. It's more about, I think photography is the common thread that binds us all together, but it's all the other things that have happened over the past couple of years that we tend to kind of talk about and commiserate in some ways around. So let's start from the beginning of the photography club journey for someone. If someone's listening to this podcast and they're like, yeah, okay, I get it. That sounds interesting so far, but I live in the middle of nowhere, or I'm busy, or whatever, whatever the excuses they may come up with, mostly valid, I'm guessing. But what would be their first steps to finding a club that they can kind of gel with? Is it like dating? You kind of go and visit a bunch of clubs and find out which one you like and then go join the club? Or do you pick one and just make it work? Or do you start one? Like, what's the best way to get going in this? Jessica, I'm curious what your thoughts are on that first.
I would say it's like dating. You probably need to try all the things. I've been parts of clubs where I did not feel like these were my people. This was not my vibe. I couldn't continue justifying spending time away from my family to go, because it's still time away from your family, whether you're looking for something like that, because sometimes just getting out of the house is the reason. But then you find communities, and that's going to be different for everybody. That's why it's important to try some of these where it's like, these are my people. I have found my people and I love these people, for whatever the reason might be. It could just be personalities, and it could be that you're learning so many things. And so I think it is very much like dating, and what are you trying to get from the experience as well? If it's just purely social, then some clubs are going to be better than others. And if it's deep into education, then again, there's going to be clubs that give more education than others. So I do think it's very much like dating. I like that analogy a lot, actually. But you guys actually at TWiP had a topic that came across my email, and then I wasn't able to join, about aliens, and I can't remember. Aliens was in there, but you might
aliens.
It said something about aliens and Bigfoot, or I don't remember. I'd have to go back and look at my email. It was something, and I'm like, you my people.
Yeah, you got to join us.
Yeah.
Sorry, you never know what's going to come up on those mixer meetings and that, and aliens certainly comes up at times, and that's what makes
It's
it
been
fun.
coming up a lot lately. Lately, aliens have been making an appearance on our little group there. Yeah, it's good. They're welcome, aliens. You are welcome, as long as you are nice aliens. So, so how yeah, define a nice alien. Yeah, and Michael, continuing on that. So when if someone is, they're interested in kind of moving and exploring this path, the whole dating metaphor, makes sense. Yeah, I want to try all these groups out, then find one that resonates with me. What are the different kinds of groups that the adventurer can expect to experience? Is it like a meetup group, or are they photo walk based? Are they more tutorial based, where you go and you sit down and someone presents or lectures for the duration of the meeting? Like what can people expect?
Yeah, great question there. And I almost want to say all of the above, and the different clubs are going to have different elements of that, or some clubs, I'll bring up the first one that I joined was the Lone Tree Photography Club, and simply Googled photo clubs near me, and this one just happened to be 2 miles away, so I went and visited, one of their meetings, liked the people that were there, and to your point, that one actually they do a little bit of all of those things. In that, we have the critiques, we have in-person meetings, we have virtual meetings, and that for those that can't attend, they're in person. We do a couple times a year, photo walks, or I'll say, social gatherings. So, now some of them will specialize just in, maybe one or two of those things. Like maybe they do, critiques, and maybe they do, a workshop or two a year, but they don't really do that much of, things in person and so forth. To me, I tend to like the ones that have a little bit of everything and kind of spread different, education amongst different genres, different skill levels, and that. So, I guess that's kind of a roundabout answer to a question of, to me, what makes a photo club complete would be one that offers kind of all of the above of what you described, and that is, photo walks, in-person meetings, social events, maybe a conference, and critiques, and every one of those things contributes to the learning process for me.
Yeah, and I gotta imagine that running a photo club, and we have a This Week in Photo meetup group actually. It's got, I think it's like 1,200 members in it, down in the San Jose area. But when I was actively running meetings, I guess it was kind of a de facto photo club, but it was I used it as a way for the guests that would come on the podcast to, if they were in town, San Jose, visiting Adobe or one of the tech companies or something, then I would, hey, can you come speak at my meetup group and, give a lecture on A, B, and C, and I'll take you to dinner afterwards, and we'll have some drinks, and you're off to your hotel or on the plane or whatever. And that worked out really well. I did those, I think at the sort of the height of it, I was doing 2 a month, like every other week, which got to be a little aggressive, so, especially with a full-time job at Adobe at the time. But the thing that I learned about it, I'm curious what you both think about this. A couple of the learnings that I took away from doing those, which I think I'll crank up again after this conversation, was one, the RSVP list. If I have a guest, one of you guys are coming to speak at my event, and I say, hey, Jessica's going to come and talk about all things, fine art and photography and post-processing and all that. I write up this beautiful post and description with sample images. The RSVP, and usually I set the RSVP limit to like 100. I think the room I was using had a capacity of comfortably of about 100. So I set it 100, and boom, I'd have 100 signups within, I don't know, a day, and then it'd be at 125 or something of people on the waiting list. And Meetup was good with that because it would intelligently manage the RSVP list and all that. So if somebody canceled, then it would backfill the next person. But the problem was, I was running these events on Thursday. It was either on a Thursday or a Friday, and people would RSVP to kind of placehold it, like, oh, I might, if I can't find anything better to do, at least I'll have that, and they'll go. But then, a lot of people would find something, quote, better to do and not cancel their reservation or whatever. And then I'd have, maybe 75% show up, to the meeting. So in order to fix that, I started adding a fee to the meeting, a small little fee. I think I added like $5 or something. And all the proceeds went to buy refreshments and towards buying the dinner for the speaker and, the room rental fee, because I was renting the community room from the local library. It was a brand new, new construction library. It had a high-tech room in there that, community members could use. So I'd use that. But once I put that fee on there, boom, RSVPs. It was only the people that really wanted to come, which is what I was kind of solving for. Only those people, just that little bit of money fixed it just like that. So I'm curious, Jessica, maybe you could throw it, either one of you. I'm curious, do you feel that same kind of flow with the groups that you guys are involved in? And is it necessary to charge money in order to make sure that people are serious and they show up to whatever event you're putting on? What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, and we're both in leadership in these groups. So Michael's the president at PPC. I'm the vice president over there. And then I'm also on the board for my local guild, which is PPGCS, Professional Photographers Guild of Colorado Springs. And I think there's something to, like, the second that you have any skin in the game, you're probably going to show up. With PPGCS in particular, there's no fees to attend meetings for members, and we've curated such a warm environment, I think, that people just want to show up to those member meetings. There's fees for workshops and whatnot. We have a lot of attendees for those too, and they're quite a bit higher on the fees, but we've never done that here. I know other organizations do. I've spoken for organizations where it's like it's $25 to come if you're a member and $35 if you're not a member. And I've talked to their leadership too on why they do that and how they do it. I don't know if it's necessary in a case like yours where you have 120 people that want to show up to a meeting. Yeah, I would say that's probably absolutely necessary. Some of these groups are quite a bit smaller, and so it doesn't feel like we need to do that at this point. I do think, like, the second you have a barrier to entry, though, like, that can become problematic too. Like, we have Zoom options for both of the groups here. We have both Zoom and in person, so you can show up to either or. And I think that's actually been a game changer on things, because we have members from all over the place that come because geographically it might not be convenient for them, or they have to stay home with sick kids, but now they can be part of the meeting, even if it is virtually.
That's actually a really good point, because when I was going through all those exercises, there was no Zoom or Zoom equivalent. I think there was Skype, but the infrastructure for doing that was iffy at best, right? You guys remember back in the day, like, even doing what we're doing right now was science fiction, right? So I think, but fast forward to today, that makes a ton of sense. If you can do that, then you can. Would you still RSVP people for the virtual version to get a head count, or is it just here's the link, show up if you want?
I think we've done both. We've absolutely, in two different groups, we've done both. And then Michael over at Lone Tree, I think they are SVP. I'm part of that group, but I'm very new. So I don't want to speak for Lone Tree, but I think there's benefits to doing either or. I think for PPC, the big draw on making sure we're doing Zoom is that we have members from all over the whole state, and everybody can't come in on a Thursday night, which would be ideal. I would love to see everybody every single third Thursday or second Thursday of the month, but when geographic problems are the problem, like, just fix the problem.
Zoom is your friend in that situation. Michael, what about Lone Tree? How does that work? And have you experienced the whole, if you put some money on it, then people have skin in the game and they're more likely to show up or participate? I know that with education, like with educational courses and building distanceware or distance learning type courses, conventional knowledge is if you make something free, people are not going to take it seriously. If you make them pay for it, they're more likely to learn the content that you put in. You feel like that applies to this conversation as well?
Yeah, again, a great question, and I really like Jessica's response to that one as it relates to PPC and the PPGCS groups and so forth. And that, what I find with the Lone Tree group, and that one is, I'll say it's there's more hobbyists. We have some professional photographers in there also, and some that make a living at it, but a lot of them are hobbyists and so forth, and they are not. I'll say we don't. The answer is we don't charge like a special fee or anything like that to attend any of our meetings. We have 2 meetings a month, first and third Wednesdays of each month. Some of them are competitions, some of them are other presentations and so forth. But we don't charge a fee, and so far we haven't really felt that need to charge something in order to make them feel like they have some skin in the game in order to attend. What we find is the best attendance that we get is when we can offer programs and speakers and presentations and judges and so forth, and that people are interested in either learning about that person or the genre of photography that's being discussed that night. But to answer your question, no, we haven't really gone the route of charging anything for each specific meeting. Once you're a member, you're able to attend all of them for free.
That's cool. What's the flow of one of these meetings? Like you sign up, and I'm a nervous first time meeting, attendee to a Lone Tree event. Uh-huh. What can I expect? And is Lone Tree typical or atypical to the average kind of photo club meeting?
I think it's pretty similar. We try and use the same techniques and so forth and that for our professional photographers, the Colorado meetings and that, as far as, the typical meeting, whether you're in person or whether you're attending in Zoom. Actually, there is a little bit of a difference. If you're attending in person, we have what we call like a 30, 45 minute before the actual meeting starts, social time. So people that are showing up early before that's our case, it's 7:00 p.m. Mountain Time as the official start time, but people will start showing up about 6:15, 6:30. And there'll be the social time. So, the person who attends in person gets the benefit of, talking to others. And oftentimes there'll be, 4, 5, 6 different conversations going on in the room during that first, I'll say 30 minutes. And then the flow of it is that then come 7:00, myself or somebody else leading the meeting will sort of go through, acknowledging the people that are there attending, thanking them for being there, go through the, I'll say upcoming events, talk about, some of the other things that we're doing, maybe talk about any of the other specific things, maybe awards or something like that members in the group have received recently. And then there'll be a introduction of, let's say, if we have a judge that night for a competition, or if we have a presentation that somebody's giving, the person who's opening the meeting will do an introduction of that person, sort of describe what their background is, what their expertise is, and then we flow into, whether it be a competition where it may be anywhere from 50 to 60 to 90 images that will be going through a competition in any given competition night, or we'll go usually about maybe 90 minutes or whatever in that of the presentation of whoever's presenting and going through whatever topic it is that they're sharing with the group.
Yeah. I'm curious about the main nugget of this is community and learning, and like we were saying in the beginning there, getting better at what you do. Jessica, do you feel like the interacting with these clubs, whether as a leader or as an attendee, do you feel like it has, I'm guessing the answer to this is going to be yes, but you feel like it has made you a better artist? And if so, in what ways? Like Michael, I know he's now a wedding photographer, so it made him a better. It gave him the onus to go out there and tackle bridezillas. But on the other side of it, what are your experiences there? Are you better for this experience?
Oh, absolutely. I think some of it leads into the competition piece. Anytime you're competing, whether you're competing against yourself, you're competing against other people, you're going to push yourself in a way that you probably wouldn't have if you're just going to create something for a client or create something because you want to. So in that way, my work has dramatically improved. I would say the other part of it is that I've learned that I love teaching. I legitimately just love when students' eyes light up. And so the best way to learn something is to teach it. And I've learned so much in my own teaching that I think that's probably, for me, the most important part of what I've gained in being part of these clubs.
You mean learn so much in terms of, as the old adage of, if you want to learn something really well, teach it. Is it that kind of? Yeah,
Yeah, and I
absolutely.
did it
That,
because there were degrees, right? Some of these organizations, like PPA, is a broad organization, and there's degrees that you can earn through PPA. And to me, I was just like, oh, I want to be that old person that has all these things on their lanyard, right? Like it feels all very important, and I want to do that. And at first, when I
goals.
did it was to get the things. And then I realized it's not to get the things, it's to be a better artist. And it was making me such a better artist very quickly. It was very fast. My skill set improved within a year, like beyond what I could have done by myself. And I'm pretty stubborn and I like to just learn things by myself. So
Yeah. In what way
I could
though? Like what was specifically like? Or I'm sure it's a bunch, but like one way that you felt like you grew as a photographer over that year dramatically.
Oh, composition. I was an artist before, so I thought I knew all the things about composition and lighting and all these things. And I realized I had no idea what I was doing because I'm stubborn and I like to teach myself stuff. I realized that I cannot teach this stuff to myself. I need other people and I need other opinions. Some of these people that I've learned from are fantastic landscape photographers, actually, that I've learned so much about composition and color balance and lighting that I would have never gotten watching YouTube videos or reading books, which is what I was doing before, was watching YouTube,
Yeah.
which is good in a lot of ways. And there's a ton of free education, but like you said earlier, if it's free, you might not take it as seriously. And when I started, even these small investments in myself, it was still an investment. I wasn't successfully running my business the way that I should have at that point. And so I was like scraping by, like every due that I had to pay or every workshop that I had to take, like I had to work for it in the beginning. So it was important to me.
Mhm.
And I think that was part of what made me work harder.
Yeah. And it really proves to yourself because you're working harder and putting all this effort in. That's not free, right? Time is money. So that's expensive. Even if you're not laying out a bunch of cash, just your mind, even thinking about stuff a lot is expensive because you're using that horsepower. You only think about one thing at a time. If you're thinking about that, you're spending your time thinking about that
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah, yeah. Michael Ryno, what about you? Like, are there any tangible ways that you can point to that your involvement in these clubs and organizations have made you a better artist?
Oh yeah, definitely. That's an easy one to answer with a real solid yes. It just kind of bringing into the Lone Tree Club, the Professional Photographers of Colorado, PPGCS, This Week in Photo, amongst the others, and so forth. I'll just bring up a couple of examples, and that is, like I mentioned, when I first got into it, it was just a matter of enhancing when I go out and I do a lot of things outdoors, hiking, fly fishing, and so forth. And that got the camera, wanted to kind of learn how to take better pictures whenever I'm out in those environments. But had I not been involved with some of these other organizations, I would have never got comfortable with I'll say photographing people. And in fact, it was one of Jessica's workshops with the PPC group down in Colorado Springs on family portraiture that I went there not really thinking that was going to be an avenue that I was going to go, but in attending her workshop, and then she went through all of the the education part of it there in the room, and then we actually went out and did some hands-on photographing of families that she had come in. All of a sudden I realized, what, maybe I can do that. Maybe that is something that I might become interested in. And over the last couple of years have done exactly that. As far as weddings, it was a couple of your, TWiP episodes and being involved with, again, Troy Miller, who, one of the very active members over there in that group, a wedding photographer. And as, he's talking about weddings and so forth and that, it's like, I would have never thought that I would go do that. And all of a sudden I was approached by a couple of friends. Hey, can you photograph my wedding? Just pretend that we're a couple of elk out there or whatever on the scene and just photograph away. And I did that. And then somebody else who attended that one liked what I provided and said, hey, we're getting married also. Would you mind doing ours? So now I've got, a handful of those weddings under my belt. And had I not ever become involved with some of these groups, I would have never thought that I would be photographing people weddings and migrating into that, and in addition to the nature photography that I do. And the last point I would bring too is also, I'll give credit to Troy with, I don't know that I would have ever really taken a dive into infrared photography. Troy, kind of gave me the heads up on that, and gave me some pointers and kind of what gear to get and where to get the camera converted and so forth. And so next thing you know, I'm getting a infrared converted camera, and now I can hardly ever leave the house without that. So, as far as like skills, I think have definitely improved. But in addition to that, just the number of genres that I'm interested in photographing has increased dramatically because of my involvement with these groups. Whereas I've been on my own throughout, I don't think I would have ever tried some of these things.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? I mean, because I think as creators, regardless of the stuff that you create, like I was saying at the beginning, it's easy to become just kind of in your own cocoon, and this is the way I do it. This is my process, and yours is great, but this is the way I do it over here. But to be exposed to the other ways or other genres or other techniques or just the electricity of other personalities and their feedback on your work is kind of a feedback loop that's like, oh, yeah, okay, I want to go out and try that thing. Or maybe I'll do this differently next time. Or, hey, Jessica did this crazy shot. I want to incorporate that bit of it into what I'm doing. I wonder if I can do that, right? And then do it and be able to get some feedback from Jessica. And yeah, you did that great, but next time try to do this a little bit differently. You might see better results. So yeah, that's what you could look at photography, like Jessica, you were saying, you could look at it as, yeah, I can learn all I need to know on YouTube or Linda or Kelby or wherever, and, go out with my camera and take a trip to Yosemite and set up my tripod and do the stuff that I learned, take it home, post-process it, maybe print it, hang it on the wall, but you're in your own little feedback loop right there. You don't know if you're doing good stuff or bad stuff, and you're not really improving. It's not until you introduce those external influences in there that you like, oh, there's a hole right there. Oh, well, my shots are overexposed, or that kind of feedback. With that, I'm curious. Like with people, their appetites have been whetted for this kind of feedback and group activity. Where do they start? Like where if I want to find one in my local area, what do I do? Get on Google Photo Club in this area, or go to a camera store and ask them? Like what are your recommendations?
Yeah, all of those are great. I think for me, I knew what PPA was, and so it was pretty easy to just go on their website and find where the local PPA affiliates were in my area, which was PPC and PPGCS. So that was pretty easy, but it's not really where I started, because I just thought, I didn't even know what PPA was. I thought it was insurance, and that is part of it, but that's what I thought the whole thing was. And so I was shocked to find out that it's this whole community that comes together a couple times a year for various events. So that's a whole different topic right there. But I would say Google. I live my life by relying on Google. I honestly don't know what I would do without it. So that's probably a good place to start. I've heard so many good things. I'm not local to quite Lone Tree area, but I've heard so many good things about the club that I actually joined that one recently too. Just to broaden my horizons. I think there's a whole wide world of photography out there, and there's so many communities within that it's pretty easy to find at least somebody that's near you, even if it's an hour drive. Like I'm going to drive up tonight to Lone Tree. It's about an hour from my house. So it's not impossible to find. And I think Google is probably the best place to start.
Yeah. Michael, you agree with that? Start on Google, do a search?
Yeah, completely. And the other thing that I would say too is, do a Google search, see what photography communities or clubs and so forth and that are, within your, area or whatever in that. And then most of them have something on, a website, or they have some kind of social media presence and so forth. So then go through and take a look at that and see if, the programs that they have, maybe, what, their workshops that they've had, workshops that they have coming up. Do they offer image critiques? Do they have image competitions? Go to their website first and take a look and see what, see what they have to offer. And most of them, I know, the couple groups that we're talking about here, PPC, Lone Tree Photo Club, the Guild, the PPGCS that Jessica mentioned down in Colorado Springs, all of them, and I think this probably goes across the board, and for those of you that live in other states and so forth, and that if you take a look at some of those, my guess is that similar to what we do, we'll offer you can attend a meeting or two in person or virtually online for free. And again, there you're going to get a good sense of who the people are, what the programs are, how that flow works at a meeting, and from there determine whether that's a good fit for you.
Love it. Okay, then the next step from that would be if I want to start one, right? I want to be the they. Like, how do I start a group? And do you recommend it, right? If someone, maybe they're in an area, they know there's a significant number of people that are interested in photography, but there's no organization around, should they just spin one up? And if they do, how do they do that? Like, what's you just say, hey, everybody, let's go meet over here at this coffee shop and then grow it from there? Or do you do something more formal or do it virtually?
I'm gonna recommend Jessica take that one on because she's actually looking at doing that. I say this, she's actually she's already come up with a program in that we're looking at within the Colorado State organization. So if she doesn't mind, right. I'll have her.
Jessica, are you going to be the they?
No, I'm not really going to be the they, but I want people in our area to be the they. So we have a very rich community of very talented photographers here, and being the vice president of the state organization for a year, it occurred to me that we're not reaching the whole state, and probably more due to geographical location more than anything. We're in Denver and not everybody's local to Denver, and we have mountains you have to get over and plains you have to drive through. And so my thought process on that was, why not support the different regions within PPC, and then we can go to them for an event and whatnot. But also then they can decide if there's something bigger there, right? They can decide, is there something here? If they're having watch parties regularly just for a PPC meeting in their studio, and they're having 10, 15, 20, 30 people show up, there's a need for a club there. And then in that way, how can PPC support that organization? And PPA is one of those affiliate or one of those organizations that you can have an affiliate. It's not called affiliate anymore. It's called community network. And it's a broader organization. And that does get you at least some visual content on, you'd have your name on their website. So it'd be easier for people to find you. But I think even meeting up at a coffee shop and seeing who wants to chat about photography or aliens or whatever happens to come up, that's probably a good place to start. But I do see a need for some of these outlying areas, at least in our state, that they could use their own small community. It's great to have a small community and then a broader community is what I found within these organizations.
Yeah, that's very good. Very good. It's really interesting to see the size. As I was doing research for this discussion, there's a ton of groups out there, right? All over the place. Almost like a little shadow kind of thing happening that a lot of photographers that just get in, that I kind of swept up in the whole YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook world, and that's where they live and that's where they interact with photographers, don't realize that there's this whole nother world of actual real humans that are meeting up and looking at each other's cameras and talking about stuff, which is like what photography used to be. Yeah, but on that though, on the whole idea of virtual, is virtual, I think I know the answer to this in my head, but is the idea of having a virtual meeting the next evolution of these groups because you can be global in nature? Or is it better to have smaller groups that are local where you can shake hands with people and break bread and and do all the things, and then maybe have a small component like Lone Tree, or I think Lone Tree was one you mentioned that has the dial-in component as well, where people can pop in and be a fly on the wall through Zoom. Is it either or? Is one better than the other? Or is a hybrid the best way? What's the best modality for these kind of meetings? I'll throw it to you, Michael. What do you think? What's the best? The best way.
Excellent question. And the way I would answer it is I believe the hybrid is a great way to do it if you can, right? I mean, if you, I'll use the, the example of, like even within our PPC group, we have, as Jessica pointed out, people that kind of live outside of the area, and it's not, we really can't expect them to always drive an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, and even further from other parts of the state to attend the meeting. So this virtual element that, to be honest, sort of came about through COVID, right? I mean, Zoom was something I know, Frederick, you were aware of, but the rest of the world, most of the rest of the world really wasn't. But it did give us an ability to have that further reach. Personally, I do encourage, for those that do live nearby, whether it's, here in, I'll say Lone Tree, Colorado, or if they're down in Colorado Springs, the group that's down there, the guild, if they're within striking distance of being able to drive to some of our meetings and our events and our workshops and that are, maybe in the Denver area with the PPC group, I still encourage that in-person attendance if you can. Part of that, the social aspect that you get of, shaking somebody's hand and talking, whether it's before the meeting, after the meeting, and so forth, and that sometimes there's a lot of value to that, I believe. But having said that, I think there's a lot of value with the virtual side of things, and that. And again, the TWiP community is a perfect example of that. Is with that, you've got people from around the world. I mean, we have Australia and Canada and California, Colorado, and other parts. The fact that we can all talk together and communicate and all have a common thing to share and common theme amongst the whole group, those have a lot of benefit for that type of a deal. And that, but the short answer is to me, the hybrid option is really pays out well and is beneficial to so many people in that, with the other couple of groups that I'm involved with.
And how does that generally work, the hybrid, though? Is it, I mean, obviously it's not a Zoom meeting, and people, I don't think people can be fully interactive and get their questions answered and as if they were in the room. Is it more of a, hey, here's your closed circuit TV view into this meeting and, there you go? Or is it, do you have them, are they more interactive?
Yeah, I can answer that one. The first part of your question is, do they work? And they do when you have a couple people who are, if Chuck is listening to this or watching this, thank you for handling the technical side of things when things don't always go right. But moving on to the other part of your question and so forth and that, I think, that we try to make those interactive. It's obviously becomes a little bit more interactive for the people that are there in person to be able to ask the questions and so forth and that they have of, say, the presenter and that at an in-person meeting, raising their hand and kind of chiming in without, now, I say that works better, I think, for those that are attending in person. For the virtual audience that comes in when we have the hybrid scenario, it more or less, their questions come in via the chat on Zoom. And then those questions will, be presented to the presenter at some point where there's a little bit of a break in the action or whatever where we can. So, it's a little bit less convenient for those that are coming in on the hybrid, but we do try to make sure that they are, feel they're, part of the scene and part of the, if they have, good questions in that they want to ask, we try to make sure that those get taken care of.
Yeah. So much to go through. One of the things is I want to, is there like a directory somewhere, and if not, maybe we should make it, right? But I feel like there should be like a yellow pages online somewhere where I could just put in my zip code and get a list, or put in my zip code in a certain radius around that zip code and get a list of all the organizations and what they're doing. Is there something that you guys know of that exists like that people can use to find a club near them? Or is it a business opportunity?
I think that's a business opportunity right there. I know there's like those broader organizations. You can go on their website and search local affiliates within their area or your area, I guess. I don't think there is, though. I've never seen anything that's quite like that. I think you have struck gold with this idea at this point.
Interesting. Yes. Or whoever's listening to this has struck gold, right?
Well, somebody.
So go ahead and go build it. I wish I had the time to build it. This is great. This is exciting because there's when I give speeches or lectures or presentations or any of that kind of stuff, the energy that I get from being in person or even in a Zoom, like when we're doing our member mixers or critiques or whatever, just that feedback that you get from other people that are like-minded, i.e. they love photography too, regardless of their genre. It is just that energy feeds onto you and kind of validates that you made the right decision to be doing this kind of thing, right? Because all these other people are doing it too. And you got to gauge your level of progress based on their work. Like, oh, this guy's doing some outstanding work with infrared. I got to up my game on that and kind of figure out how to do that because that looks interesting, or underwater or whatever, right? It's just getting exposed to all these different things. So let's wrap it up here and kind of end with like next steps for folks that are listening. Jessica, I'll let you lead us off with this. If I'm a photographer, I'm interested in diving into this. We touched on this a little bit before, but I'm interested in diving in and learning about these groups, virtual or otherwise. Should I just join like Lone Tree and be a fly on the wall virtually since they have a Zoom component anyway and get an idea of how that goes, or what's the best way?
No. And I'm naturally not an extrovert. So for me, going in person the first couple times was really hard. And while I love teaching and talking to people, it's very hard when I don't know somebody yet. So that was kind of intimidating, but I jumped in and I did the things. And I would say, had I joined online, I wouldn't have stayed. It wouldn't have been as interesting to me, that social aspect to it when you're by yourself all the time. And I am one of those photographers that for 15 years, I just worked by myself or have kids on my lap or had my clients, but for the most part, I was editing for hours a day by myself. So that in-person aspect to me is very important if you can make it happen. And if you can't, then find a way to do it if you can. But I would say definitely do not start on Zoom. I would see if they have trials. Most of these organizations have 1 or 2 times that you can come hang out and see if it's right for you and see what it's all about before jumping in with dues and committing money and all that.
Yeah. And Michael, do you agree with that? Like to get started, seek out the in-person meetings versus virtual?
I think there's some benefits to that. I'm much like Jessica just mentioned in that I'm more on the introverted side of things and so forth and that. So, but I still look back at the very first time that I just got a camera, looked up, like I say, Google, here's a club right down the street from me and that. So I walked in not knowing anybody there, but, really enjoyed, meeting the people. And that's the other thing I would say through all of this too, is that by putting yourself into that in-person environment, by going there and participating in the social side of it, now I'm, much more comfortable. I'd say that's one of the benefits of these clubs that you go to in person, and that is getting to know the people. And I'll say kind of help bring me out of my shell a little bit, maybe a little bit better at presenting and speaking and so forth, just happening by being at those. So I do agree with that. Although I would say that if you don't have a club that's nearby and you're interested in, again, just furthering your education in photography, or if you're just starting out and you want to know a good way to learn, the online communities can work very well. And even if they have a hybrid option, if it's not convenient to go to, but if joining via Zoom or whatever platform they use for their virtual programs, I would encourage doing that. But to Jessica's point, the more that you can do some of the in-person thing, I'll say like with PPC, we have our annual conference coming up in early November. What we have found is, even feedback from our members, and that is, they really enjoy the social aspect of some of those types of things, some of our in-person meetings, and that ends up becoming a big part of why they stay members, as opposed to just joining and being not very involved. So the more engagement that you can have with the organization that you select, the better, the more learning opportunities you're going to have, and in my mind, the better you're going to see more of the improvement there in your photography.
Yeah, very good, very well said. Mm-hmm. All right, last question before we do closing. Where can people contact you stuff? the dark side of photography groups is, or any group, right, is going to be there's always a bad apple, or somebody who does stuff that they're not supposed to be doing in the meeting, or doesn't, whatever, however it manifests, there's always going to be at least one problem child in the mix. How do you deal with that? Like, Michael, I know you, like being the president, I'm sure you had to deal with situations like this, and you're very tactful. How do you deal with problem children when they infiltrate your group?
It never happens. No, and not necessarily, not necessarily problem. With any organization, right? Whether we've experienced that with corporate America. I did too many years, 38 years of corporate banking, and in large organizations like that, corporations and so forth. Yeah, you're going to have different people that are going to have different opinions or different ideas or different ways of doing things, maybe versus that. So. Like you said, what we try to do is make sure that we're looking at it from the standpoint of, what's in the best interest of our members, what's in the best interest of, we have boards of directors, we have committee chair people and so forth, and that chairpersons, and what we try and do is make sure that everything is runs as smoothly as it can. But to your point, yeah, you're occasionally going to have somebody has different ideas or different thoughts, and then it's a matter of trying best to work through those and coming up with the best solution. Ultimately, what do we feel is the best solution for the organization?
Well said. Jessica, you have anything to add to that? We all have kids, but you're a mom, so how do you you should have the skills to deal with problem children, right?
I have 4 kids of varying ages, so it's there's always going to, and I don't think it's that there's like problem members. I feel like it's somebody will have an opinion about this, that, or the other, and this is any job. Like, I also was in banking, oddly enough. Not Michael and I didn't know each other then, but there's always going to be somebody that's not quite getting along, and in my mind, that's not a problem. It means maybe they're not maybe this group is not their best fit, or maybe there's something that we could be doing from a leadership standpoint that would better serve the group as a whole. And like, these are the kind of conversations that we have behind the scenes. And I think so much happens behind the scenes that people don't realize or is going on in a volunteer type organization. But the focus is always like, what is best for the membership as a whole? And like, how can we support individuals as well? So sometimes it just comes down to like, how can we support that person? It's much like having kids. If a kid is having a tantrum, not that any of our members have had tantrums, but if a kid's having a tantrum, like sometimes that's literally because they're uncomfortable and they need something. And then how do you address that?
Yeah. Jessica, what does the organizational structure look like for these types of organizations?
So what I've come across, at least, is that there's a body of members, and then there's a board of directors. Some of them are bigger than others. And then within that board of directors, there's varying roles. So there's the typical roles of president, vice president, secretary, treasurer. And then sometimes that makes up the whole executive board, and sometimes the whole board makes up the board. So it can vary a little bit, but it's very much a group collaborative effort when making decisions and planning events. And it's pretty generally never just one person behind the scenes working. It's a huge team of people. I think even Lone Tree has something similar set up to where it's a large team of people that are planning and working simply because they love the organization. I don't know that many organizations pay any of these people. We don't get paid for what we do.
Yeah, I was going to ask that. Is that how it goes, Michael? Is just, it's a labor of love, volunteer, and, hopefully it all comes together at the end?
It is. Like I said, as Jessica pointed out, there's no pay associated with it, but you do get the, I'll say, personal satisfaction in that of, hopefully, coming up with programs and coming up with things that people are interested in and are willing to attend, and again, getting that engagement and the thing that we really, I think, get some enjoyment out of is seeing other members progress, right? When they've attended a couple of workshops and all of a sudden now they're getting, I'll say in the case of PPC or PPA or whatever, and that all of a sudden their images that they weren't getting what they call merits or recognition in the past, all of a sudden through some of the process, they start getting there, and all of a sudden now they start being able to compete for the various degrees and that. So it's not something that we're looking at it from a standpoint of financial economic benefits to ourselves, but more just what can we share and how can we help our members become better photographers and ultimately get to where they're more successful. So I don't know if that answered the question exactly, but that's kind of the direction that we try to go, and we as a board or as a group for all these different organizations, ultimately that's what we're striving for, is seeing better success for the members and seeing their photography improve.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's why I do what I do, right? It's,
Right.
The tagline for TWiP, I don't know if I've ever said this publicly, but the kind of my internal tagline for TWiP is to inspire, inform, and educate, with a sprinkling of entertainment on there to photographers worldwide, right? And that's the kind of the gist of it. And, it's fun. Like, and for me, for the first, decade plus of TWiP, it was kind of a, if I'm lucky, break even operation, so it was, so it is very much I understand the whole labor of love and let's do this thing because we love doing it. And it's for the good of humankind to be doing this and to help photographers become better photographers. So yeah, this is exciting. I'm glad you guys took the time to have this conversation. I think it's important for photographers to at least get in their heads that this idea of interacting with other people around this topic of photography that we love it's so crucial, especially today. I mean, it arguably always has been, but I think today especially, because there's so much information flowing around, there's so much change in all creative industries, and the gear changes and the law changes and all these things. I remember a couple years ago, several years ago, there was all the conversation was around where you could shoot, right? It was around, I can't bring a tripod and put it over there, but I can put it over here. But if I get a monopod, I can use it, and those conversations have kind of boiled down a little bit, I think largely because you could take this and no one cares, right? Your iPhone, and no one cares. But yeah, it's I think these conversations and the tactile feel of being in the same room with someone cannot be understated. So let's leave it right there. Michael Ryno, tell us where people can find you, see some of your work, maybe check out the clubs that you're involved in. And I'll have all these links in the show notes for the episode. But, for folks that are sitting there right now, where do they go to connect?
Sure. If it's me personally, anyways, and it would be I'll say in Instagram at the @ MNRYNO. Website is Michael Ryno Photography. Also have a website, as I mentioned, now that I'm doing some of the portraits in that. There's one called rhinoportraits.com.
Nice.
And I'm also out there on MN Ryno on Twitter, and on Facebook it would be Michael Ryno. I think just look that up. There's not a whole lot of Michael Rynos, RYNO, out there in that. So you'll find me there. And then as far as some of the groups in that, Lone Tree Photo Club has its a link out there, lonetreephotoclub.com, I think it is, or something like that. But it's not too hard to find. And same thing with Professional Photographers of Colorado. We have we actually have a group website out there in that to go find that one also in that. So again, just Google Professional Photographers of Colorado, and you'll see on there some of our events that we have upcoming and things that we've been doing in the past.
And just for the record, Ryno is Ryno for folks that are Googling it, because you said it really fast, Michael. I know people are like RHINO, or is it Republican in name only? Like, what is it, right? It's RYNO, none of those. So very cool.
That's right. And like I say, when you Google that, you won't find a whole lot of others with that spelling. So
yeah, very good. And you're lucky. Imagine if you had a name like Fred Johnson.
Imagine that, right?
Imagine that. All right, Jessica, what about you? You have the last word. Where can people go to connect with you, see some of your work, learn from you, all the things?
So mine is super easy because I'm the only Jessica Vallia, Vallia, ever. So I'm the only one. And my website's just jessicavallia.com to make it as easy as humanly possible. My last name, my maiden name is York. So I'm very happy that I've married into a name that's not common, because
Nice.
Jessica York photography would not have been, there's probably 40 of them at least. So
Yeah.
Jessica Vallia
Very
Photography. I'm on Facebook and Instagram. Same. It's just Jessica Vallia Photography. I tried to keep it as easy as humanly possible. And I think PPC's website is ppcolorado.com. I think it's pretty easy. And then PPGCS is literally ppgcs.com.
Easy.
And
It's in
I'm
the
highly
name.
active in both of those groups. I'm actually teaching at the conference that we have coming up. While I'm the chair of that event, also I got talked into, let's also be a speaker. So I'll be speaking at that one.
Very good. So Jessica Vallia, so you are the only one like in existence?
Mm-hmm.
So you're an NFT. You realize that, right? You are the personification of an NFT.
I don't understand NFTs, so
It just means that there's only one. You're the authenticated one. So there's all others are copies. You are the one that has a certificate that says I'm the original. So
yes.
you're the original.
I wasn't born into it, but by marriage, I'm the only one, and that works out really well for my business.
That's
Except
awesome.
that no one knows
really
how
cool.
to say it, and that's where the struggle comes in. But
Of course. Yeah, of course. Well, cool. Thank you to both of you for coming on. I appreciate you. This has been a great conversation. I feel like we should extend this conversation in kind of vertical directions when we speak again, and maybe dive into like just the setup of a group, or dive into how to present to a group. If there are photographers out there that want to kind of get into that circuit, how do they do it? Do they just call up a Michael Ryno and say, hey, I got this thing I want to talk about. Can I come speak at your group? And how does that work? So the mechanics, I think if you guys are up for it, we'll do a follow-up and talk about kind of the mechanics of running a group and all that stuff versus are they necessary? Sound good?
Yeah, that would be great. Like you said, there's plenty of subtopics out of this one here. We covered a lot of things in general, but there's 3 or 4 of those things that could be their own episode in themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah, we could totally dive in. Excellent. All right. Well, thank you both. Have a great rest of your day. Jessica, tonight, you're presenting tonight, right? Break a leg.
I'll be it's my first time going too, so I don't know anybody. Well, I might know a few friendly faces, but I don't know everybody.
Well, then after the event, you will know a bunch of people, and there you go.
I know.
Right? So, yeah. Very cool. All right, we'll leave it right there. Thank you, guys, and we'll see you, Michael. Hopefully, I'll see you on Friday. Maybe Jessica, if you come to our TWiP meeting.
By
This
Friday,
I'll try and join in. I'm going to be at a wedding up in the Aspen area this Friday night. But like I say, every Friday that I'm available, I try and make those. This Friday, unfortunately, is one that I can't make. I can't make it for the duration, but maybe I can weigh in and say hello for a couple minutes.
You dial in from the wedding. That's it. Use your phone and just live stream the wedding. Be that guy.
There you go.
All right. We'll leave it right there.
On Saturday, but they have a dinner on Friday night, so that's the deal.
Oh yeah. No worries. Yep. Yeah. The mixer that we run is more of if you don't have anything better to do, you can come hang out with the other people that don't have anything better to do on Friday, and we commiserate and have fun. Yeah, on Friday.
It's always on my list for. I try and make sure I schedule or work my schedule around being able to attend those. They're a lot of fun.
Very cool. All right, we'll leave it right there. Thank you both, and we'll see you next time. Have a good rest of your day and a good rest of your week. This is TWiP.